What if the person you trust the most becomes the reason you end up in the hospital? Not because of an accident, but because of the silent weight of heartbreak. That's the strange thing about emotions. They're invisible, yet sometimes they hit harder than gravity. Future wife, if you're watching this sometime, I want you to understand something. Humans are like complex systems. Humans are like complex systems. When everything is aligned, trust, respect, kindness, the system runs smoothly. But when one critical component fails, the entire system can collapse. And right now, I'm lying here in a hospital bed because something inside that system broke. It wasn't one big explosion. It was small things, small words, small moments, small silences, like tiny cracks in a spacecraft. At first, you think it's nothing. But over time, pressure builds, and eventually, the structure can't hold anymore. I believed in us the way engineers believe in a mission. You plan, you calculate, you give it your full energy, because the goal is beautiful. A life together, a future together, something that actually means something. But love, like building rockets, requires two people working on the same mission. If one person stops caring, the mission fails. Right now, my body is here in this hospital, but the real damage happened long before the doctors got involved. Stress, sleepless nights, thinking over and over about where things went wrong. It's strange how the mind keeps replaying memories like a broken loop. Still, even from this hospital bed, I'm learning something important. Pain is data. It tells you what matters. It shows you where things went wrong. So the next version of your life can be stronger. Maybe someday you'll understand the weight of the choices you made. Maybe you'll realize that someone was trying to build a future with you, brick by brick, dream by dream. And maybe, if the universe is kind, I'll walk out of this hospital not as a broken person, but as an upgraded version of myself. Stronger, wiser, ready to build a life where love isn't something that destroys you, but something that helps you reach the stars. Because the truth is, even when a mission fails, you don't stop building rockets. You learn, you rebuild, and you try again. Emotional pain can break a person just like physical damage. It is strange how something invisible can feel heavier than something you can actually touch. If someone breaks an arm, everyone sees the cast and understands the injury. People offer sympathy, time to heal, and patience. But when the heart is damaged by someone you trusted, there is no visible cast, no clear signal to the outside world that something inside you has fractured. The human mind is an incredibly powerful system. It processes memories, emotions, and expectations all at the same time. When someone you care about deeply begins to hurt you, the brain starts running through thousands of questions, like a computer trying to solve an impossible equation. What went wrong? Was it something I said? Something I did? Could I have prevented it? These questions repeat over and over, like a loop that never shuts down. The energy it consumes is massive. Sleep becomes difficult because your mind keeps analyzing every past moment, every conversation, every small detail that might explain why the person you trusted became the source of your pain. In engineering, when a machine experiences constant stress, even small cracks can eventually cause a major failure. Human emotions work in a similar way. One harsh word may not destroy someone immediately, but repeated disappointment, neglect, and silence can slowly weaken a person's internal structure. At first, you try to stay strong. You convince yourself that things will improve. You tell yourself that maybe the other person is just having a difficult time. So you keep investing energy, patience, and hope into the relationship, believing that eventually everything will stabilize. But emotional pain doesn't disappear simply because you ignore it. It accumulates. The brain keeps storing every hurtful moment like data being saved in a memory bank. Over time, the weight of that stored pain starts affecting the body itself. Stress hormones increase. Your chest feels tight. Your heart beats faster at night when the thoughts return. You wake up tired even after sleeping, because your mind never fully powered down. It is like running a computer processor at maximum capacity for days without rest. Eventually, the body starts reacting in ways you never expected. Headaches appear. Your appetite changes. You feel physically exhausted, even when you have done nothing physically demanding. Doctors sometimes explain that emotional stress can create real physical symptoms. Because the mind and body are not separate systems, they are deeply connected. When the person causing that emotional damage is someone you once trusted completely, the impact becomes even more intense. Trust is like the foundation of a structure. When the foundation cracks, everything built on top of it begins to shake. You start questioning your own judgment. How did I not see this earlier? Was the connection ever real? These doubts slowly attack your confidence, making you feel smaller than you once were. The difficult part is that emotional injuries rarely happen in a single dramatic moment. They usually develop through a series of small experiences, unanswered messages, dismissive words, promises that slowly lose their meaning. Each moment may seem minor on its own, but together they create a heavy pressure inside the mind. Imagine carrying a backpack and adding one small stone every day. At first it feels light, but after enough time passes, the weight becomes overwhelming. Emotional pain works the same way. It grows quietly until one day the person carrying it can barely move forward. That is when people sometimes reach a breaking point. The mind becomes overloaded with unresolved emotions, and the body begins to show the consequences of that pressure. Some people describe it as feeling like their heart is physically aching. Others feel constant fatigue or a deep sense of emptiness that they cannot easily explain. The brain is trying to process loss, betrayal, confusion, and disappointment all at once. The surprising thing about emotional pain is how deeply it can affect someone who once believed they were strong. Strength does not mean you are immune to damage. Even the most advanced machines require careful maintenance and protection from excessive stress. When someone experiences emotional harm from the person they trusted most, it can feel like the entire system inside them is malfunctioning. Thoughts become heavy, motivation disappears, and even simple daily tasks start feeling harder than they used to be. The mind keeps searching for answers, while the body absorbs the consequences of the emotional impact. The connection between the heart and the brain continues processing memories, questions, and feelings without ever truly shutting down. Love only works when both people stay committed to the same mission. In many ways, a relationship is like building something ambitious together. When two people decide to care for each other, they are not just sharing time or emotions. They are starting a long-term project that requires effort, patience, and cooperation from both sides. Think about how complex systems work, whether it's technology, a company, or even a spacecraft. Success never happens because of one single component. Ever. Part has a role, and every part must function properly for the entire system to succeed. If even one important component stops working, the system becomes unstable. Relationships operate in a very similar way. Trust, respect, communication, and loyalty are like the core systems that keep everything running smoothly. If both people actively maintain these systems, the relationship becomes strong and reliable. But if one person stops maintaining their part of the structure, problems start appearing very quickly. At the beginning of a relationship, people are usually aligned with the same vision. They talk about the future, about dreams, about building something meaningful together. That shared vision becomes the mission that both people believe in. A mission only works when both individuals continue moving in the same direction. If one person is working hard to build the future while the other person slowly loses focus or commitment, the balance begins to break, the effort becomes one-sided, and the relationship starts losing its stability. In engineering terms, imagine two engines designed to push a rocket forward. If both engines fire with the same power, the rocket moves smoothly toward its destination. But if one engine suddenly stops producing thrust, the rocket loses balance and starts drifting off course. The same thing happens emotionally. One person may continue giving effort, attention, and care, believing that the mission still matters. Meanwhile, the other person may slowly withdraw without clearly explaining what changed. This imbalance creates confusion. The person who is still committed starts trying harder to fix things, but trying harder to fix things. They send longer messages, make more sacrifices, and invest more emotional energy, hoping that the connection will return to what it once was. But love cannot survive on effort from only one side. No matter how much energy one person puts into maintaining the relationship, it cannot fully function if the other person stops contributing to the same goal. When both people are committed, problems become challenges that they solve together. Disagreements become opportunities to understand each other better. Difficult moments become temporary obstacles instead of permanent damage. But when commitment disappears on one side, even small problems begin to feel impossible to solve. Communication becomes weaker. Patience becomes shorter. Misunderstandings grow faster because there is no longer a shared effort to fix them. The hardest part about this situation is that commitment is not always lost suddenly. Sometimes it fades slowly. One person may begin responding less, showing less interest in conversations, or avoiding the emotional responsibilities that relationships require. The other person often senses that something is changing but struggles to understand exactly what it is. They may continue trying to hold the relationship together, believing that if they just show enough care and understanding, things will return to normal. But relationships are not sustained by hope alone. They are sustained by consistent actions from both individuals. Commitment is not just a feeling someone talks about. It is something shown through daily behavior, honesty, and effort. When two people truly believe in the same mission, they naturally support each other's growth. They protect the connection instead of slowly weakening it. They understand that the relationship itself is something valuable that deserves attention and care. Without that shared mission, the relationship starts feeling like a project where only one person is working while the other has quietly walked away from the control room. The person who remains committed keeps trying to operate the entire system alone, but eventually the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. Love was never meant to be carried by one person. It requires two minds choosing the same direction, two hearts investing energy into the same future, and two people continuing to believe that the mission they started together is still worth building every single day. Pain teaches lessons that help build a stronger future. Most people try to avoid pain at all costs, especially emotional pain. It feels uncomfortable, heavy, and sometimes overwhelming. But pain also carries information. It shows you what matters, what went wrong, and what needs to change. In many ways, life works like a long experiment. You try things, you build connections, and you trust people. Sometimes those experiences succeed, and sometimes they fail. When something fails, the immediate reaction is disappointment. But hidden inside that failure is valuable data. Engineers and innovators understand this idea very well. When a rocket explodes during a test, it looks like a disaster from the outside. But the engineers don't only see the explosion. They analyze every detail. They study the pressure levels, the timing of the systems, the exact moment where the structure stopped holding together. That information becomes the foundation for the next improvement. Without failure, there would be no way to understand what needed to change. Emotional pain works in a similar way. When someone experiences heartbreak, betrayal, or deep disappointment, the feeling is extremely difficult to process. The mind keeps replaying memories, searching for answers about what happened. At first, the focus is usually on the loss itself. You think about the person, the moments you shared, and the future you imagined together. But over time, if you reflect carefully, the pain begins revealing patterns and lessons. You start noticing things you ignored before, small signals that you said. Moments where your instincts tried to warn you, but you chose to stay hopeful instead. These realizations are not meant to create regret. They're meant to create awareness. Pain has a way of sharpening perception. After experiencing emotional damage, people often become more thoughtful about who they trust and how they invest their energy. They begin understanding that not every connection is meant to last forever. Another important lesson that pain teaches is about personal strength. Many people underestimate their ability to recover from difficult experiences. When heartbreak first happens, it can feel like the end of everything meaningful. But the human mind has an incredible ability to adapt. Slowly, day by day, the intensity of the pain changes. What once felt unbearable becomes something you can observe and understand, rather than something that completely controls you. During that process, people often discover parts of themselves that were hidden before. They realize they can survive emotional storms that once seemed impossible to handle. Pain also forces people to reevaluate their priorities. When everything is going well, it is easy to move through life without questioning the direction you are heading. But difficult experiences create moments of deep reflection. You start asking important questions. What kind of life do I really want to build? What kind of people deserve to be part of that life? What values should guide the relationships I choose in the future? These questions slowly reshape your perspective. The version of yourself that emerges after experiencing emotional pain is often more aware, more careful, and more focused on building something meaningful rather than something temporary. Growth rarely happens during comfort. It usually happens during moments when life challenges your expectations, when a relationship breaks your trust, or your hopes collapse. The mind is forced to rebuild its understanding of reality. That rebuilding process is not easy. It requires patience and honesty with yourself. You begin identifying what you tolerated before that you should never accept again. You start recognizing the importance of boundaries and self-respect. Over time, the pain that once felt destructive begins transforming into experience. Instead of seeing the past only as something painful, you start seeing it as a training ground that prepared you for the future. The knowledge gained through emotional struggle becomes part of your internal guidance system. It helps you make better decisions, recognize healthier relationships, and protect your energy more wisely. Pain reshapes perspective in ways that comfort never could. It forces deeper thinking, stronger awareness, and a clearer understanding of what truly deserves your time, trust, and commitment.